Happy New Year! My name is Liz, and you're watching For Booking Out Loud. So today is going to be my December wrap-up, so I can move on to 2021 and celebrate my reading month. And then later I'll do a 2020 survey. But let's move on. This month in particular, I read 27 books. I am currently reading To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. Got that right. By Christopher Paolini. Did not realize that book was almost 900 pages when I picked it up 3 days before the year ends. So that'll be my first finish of 2021. And I'm also still listening to the audio of Crime and Punishment. Basically, that's been going on all month, just because I have no motivation to read it. So we'll see if that one continues. My bad. Alright, so for December, I read a total of 27 books, which honestly, I'm really happy about. I read a couple of long books that I wasn't entirely expecting, including the longest book in my library, so I'm gonna give myself credit for this. Now, here's some stats. So out of those 27 books, I read 1 1-star, 4 2-stars, 12 3-stars, 7 4-stars, and 3 5-stars. And considering I don't believe I had a 5-star book in November, I'm really happy with that. And I am gonna go over some genres that I read, but I'm not really happy with the pick that I had. It was just really handy. It's what I wrote in my journal. So next month I will be better at this, I promise. Okay, the most read genre I had is horror, mystery, thriller. And this is what I'm saying, I combined all 3 of those into like one category. Not next time. But I read 15 horror mystery thrillers. For sci-fi, I read 4. And then realistic fiction, 2. Historical fiction, 2. And then fantasy, 2. With a singular nonfiction book. Again, could be better separating some of those genres. Like some of my realistic fiction were definitely romance, and I could have gone through that. So we'll just see. Next month will be better. Just to continue on a trend, here are all of the books I read this month with their star rating. All right, and just like last time, I'm gonna go over series, authors, and then novels that I find particularly talkable, discussable. And all of this will be time-stamped in the video, so you can skip around however you choose, or just leave a like, comment, and leave the video at this point. But anyway, my series update, I really only finished the Witcher series this past month. I didn't try to start a new series. I didn't go to, I don't know. I just wanted to finish up The Witcher this year. And so I did that with the 8th book, technically in the series, called A Season of Storms. However, this book is more of a prequel rather than a continuation of the series. And I did go into this book knowing that, and it's supposed to be taking place within the story's time frame of The Last Witch, which is the first book of the series that you're supposed to read. Loved that one. However, overall, I was very disappointed with the story. I only gave it a 2-star. And that's all I can really say. I mean, it's another story with Gerald, whom I love, but it doesn't have the action of The Last Wish, The Last Wish, or the second prequel. which I'm forgetting the name of. I'll put it here for you. So I finished The Witcher, and overall I enjoyed the series, but I think stick to the first couple books that were released, just because personally I found them more exciting and lovely to read. Going on to the authors that I read, I'm going to start with Stephen King, because I actually read 5 of his books this month, which I didn't really realize until this moment. So go Liz. The first book I want to talk about from this month is Dr. Sleep. I'll do this because it's my lowest rated Stephen King book this month. Maybe not to date, but definitely this month. Dr. Sleep is the sequel of The Shining, and Stephen King wrote them almost 30 years apart, I think. But it was released in 2013, if that gives you any indication. And it's supposed to follow the life of Danny, who was the little boy in The Shining, in his 40s. I don't know what else to say other than this was a very unneeded sequel. And there was a lot of just fan service, I guess, in this book that I thought did not make a good story overall. I ended up rating it a 1.5. It was really boring to get through. I had no connection to the characters. And I thought the quote-unquote villain or the evil presence in this book, evil people, were just not believable and up to par on Stephen King's characterization. So unfortunate. I still need to watch the movie. I heard the movie was amazing, or at least better than the book in this case. So we'll see on that one, maybe next month. So the second book I want to talk about from Stephen King is The Dead Zone. Now this book follows a man named Johnny Smith who, because of an accident, physical accident, he ends up becoming clairvoyant, and he can see the future on people and just these different abilities. The concept itself to me sounds really fun, but again, I thought the execution was not there. I've heard reviews where the book kind of reads as a movie, as if you're watching the movie. I personally didn't see it. I thought The Dead Zone could have been better. It could have been more horrific. The guy has 2 different villains he has to overcome, I guess. And I didn't like any of the side characters. So I gave this book a 2-star. I gave this book a 2-star, and I'm gonna stick with that and really hope that I don't read another one like this. The third Stephen King book I want to talk about, and really it is a Richard Bachman book, and it's my last Richard Bachman book, so I'm really proud of that, but it's thinner. I did end up reading this during a vlog I posted this month, and if you want to watch that, I'll link it above and below. It might be over there actually, one of these two, above and below. But I really enjoyed it. As a short summary, it's about a man named Billy who kind of accidentally, kind of on purpose, kind of his fault, kind of not, runs over a gypsy woman who is in town with her family and kills her. And so her father puts a curse on Billy to become thinner. And as an overweight man, it at first seems like a great thing. He's losing weight, he's being healthier in his wife's eyes, but then he starts losing too much and too much and too much until some things happen, right? I found this book really intriguing about halfway through, and then I could do without the second half of the book, but then the ending brings it all together, and I absolutely loved it. So what can I say? I gave this book a 3 stars. I don't know if I'd read it again, maybe far in the future, but I recommend it. It's a great mystery, horror kind of book. not too much thriller, but. The next book I want to talk about by Stephen King from this month is Christine. Now, Christine is about a... It's a really weird story, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. It's about a car that's possessed by an evil spirit. Point blank. That's the whole story, and I really, really liked it. I thought I was going to hate this book, actually, going into it. I thought it would definitely be one of the King books that, not a fan, very similar to The Dead Zone, for example. However, one of the main aspects that I found wonderful was that the point of view in this book is not the boy who owns Christine, who gets Christine for a cheap amount of money, whose name is Arnie, but it is from the perspective of Arnie's best friend, Dennis. And he's looking at this, kind of retelling the tale, like, this one, or back in the day, my friend bought this car, and this is the story that happened. And I loved it. I don't know why. It just really intrigued me, and I thought it kept the pace going quite a lot. So I would recommend this book if you have not read it before. It is a wonderful horror book from King. And then the fifth book I read of Stephen King this year is The Stand. So I was not really expecting to read The Stand, but I just figured I'd pick it up without really knowing a lot about it. And lo and behold, it is an apocalyptic disease horror book, sci-fi. And I actually love that genre, or those tropes. And it is a beautiful, beautiful book. I am so, so glad I read it, even though it's over 1,100 pages. I did do a vlog about it, which again, I'll link above and below for your perusal. But honestly, I gave it a 4-star, I believe, maybe a 4.5. But it's worth every page you read, and I would highly, highly suggest it if you have not read it yet. Currently, I'm watching the TV show, which in itself is really interesting, and it's kind of moving a little slow, but I really wanted to finish the first adaptation before I go on to the CBS All Access adaptation that's currently running. Read The Stand. But the second author I read a lot this month was Junji Ito. I ended up reading 3 of his stories, which I wasn't actually expecting. I only really wanted to read 2, but really, really glad I did. And so let's just get into it, right? So the first Junji Ito book that I want to talk about is Remina. And this is, I believe, the most recent release by Viz Media, or V-I-Z Media. And they're the ones that release all these English covers that are actually quite beautiful. And going into this book, I didn't realize that it's based off of a Lovecraft horror concept, which is Remina, but spelled differently. And it's about this planet that consumes other planets, and it's coming to Earth. I thought it was such a weird but intriguing concept when I started this book. And then of course it's Junji Ito, and he ultimately delivers a beautiful, beautiful, weird horror story. That's kind of all I can talk about with this. It's Junji Ito, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it has an intriguing concept, it's horrific. But I would really look into this if you're more of a sci-fi horror kind of person, and it has a weird but really intriguing ending too. Okay, the second book I want to talk about by Junji Ito is going to be No Longer Human. I was told going into this book it's a lot sadder and just different than Ito's other work because he is recreating a pretty famous Japanese novel of the same name. And that was really true going into it. I wasn't expecting the story to go quite what it did, but at the same time, it it was really beautiful in a way, really disheartening and sad. Really just, it was an interesting novel, and I'm really glad I picked it up. I don't know if I'd read it anytime soon again, but really glad that it's here and that I can have access to it. Cause it's something, that's for sure. It's something. Oh, and I gave this one a 3.5 stars. And then of course the third Junji Ito novel short story collection that I read this year is called Smashed. And again, it's just a whole bunch of his short stories collected into one book. There are 13 short stories in this beautiful book. And my personal favorites were Roar, Earthbound, The Mystery of the Haunted House, Library Vision, and Smashed, the titled story. Again, I did this, I read this in a vlog, and if you're interested to hear more about that, I'll link it above and below. But ultimately, I gave this one, I believe, a 4-star. Yeah, I gave this one a 4-star, and I'd definitely check this out. I liked this collection of short stories a lot more than Shiver, which I've also read. There we go. All right, and then the third author I didn't really know I was concentrating on, but did this month, was Ruth Ware. I ended up reading 3 of her novels this month, kind of coincidentally. I only was expecting 1, but not sad that I did. The first one I want to talk about is One by One, which was just released this year, and it's supposed to be Ruth Ware's closed circle mystery, which means it has to be somebody in this closed room, boat, a place where no one can move, and one of the people there is a murderer, usually. I was really excited to read this book because I haven't read, to my knowledge, a closed circle mystery yet I was really disappointed. I thought the concept was great, but then I ended up guessing the killer about a third of the way through the book, and then that just left the rest of the book kind of bland because I'm just waiting for it to be over and waiting for me to be proved right. So ultimately it was a disappointing book. So I'm gonna give it a 2.5 stars because I know there's people out there that would enjoy it, but I personally did not, and I will still look for maybe one closed circle mystery out there that I might enjoy. The second Ruth Ware book I want to talk about is, there it is, The Woman in Cabin 10. I actually really enjoyed this one. I knew it was supposed to be on a cruise ship. I knew it was supposed to be murder mystery again, but I did not expect to like it as much as I did. I ended up giving it a 3-star, and that's because I don't think it's her best mystery novel. I think that still goes to Turn of the Key or In a Dark, Dark Woods, which I'll talk about soon. But I thoroughly enjoyed myself reading it. I loved the pacing and the way that each chapter is kind of started with people from outside her cruise ship trying to look for her and like, where is this woman? I just found it really, really great and quite a fast read. So I would suggest this if you're looking for a good mystery. And then of course, the third Ruth Ware book I read this month was In a Dark, Dark Woods. I started reading it knowing absolutely nothing about it other than it was Ruth Ware's first novel. It was awesome. I loved how time was skipping in each chapter, and I just thought that increased the mystery aspect of it more. And because of that, the pacing was incredibly great. I was more and more intrigued as I went on, and I honestly didn't guess the ending, which I think is one of the best parts of any horror book, if you can do that for me. Because I'm pretty good at guessing the endings. No, but really, you read a mystery to be surprised, and Ruth Ware did a great job at this in this book. I ended up giving it a 4-star, and I would recommend it to anyone who's looking for a good mystery, honestly. All right, so on to the novels. There are quite a few novels. I'm gonna try to talk about 8, and I'm gonna go from lowest rated to highest rated. So let's just get into it. The very first one is going to be The Loop by Jeremy Robert Johnson. And I was really, really excited to get my hands on this novel because it's based in Oregon, and again, it's a horror disease kind of book, and I heard it was really graphic, which I'm finding I really enjoy because something's the matter with me. I don't know. You decide. But I also read this book right after finishing The Stand by Stephen King, which is along the same lines, not exactly, but like the disease part. And so I just read this wonderful, huge book that I absolutely loved, and then I'm reading The Loop, which I don't know if it's just because I just had finished The Stand or if I was not intrigued by this type of horror, but I just didn't really enjoy myself reading The Loop. It is set in, again, Western Oregon, where this small town lives close to an experimental scientific type facility where, unbeknownst to the town's citizens, they've kind of been experimenting with this monster disease horror thing. And our two main protagonists are high school students, Lucy and Bucket. And it starts off with Lucy remembering a shooting at her school, and then a couple chapters later, another boy in their class is like ripping their teacher to shreds and biting their throats out. So again, it has everything I'd like in it. I'm gonna try it again in the future for sure, when I'm not just finishing The Stand, and I'm hoping I will enjoy this book more. But if any of that sounds intriguing to you, I highly, highly suggest you look up The Loop. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is The Story of Mina Lee by Nancy Jooyoun Kim. And this book was absolutely beautiful in my mind. It's kind of hard to pick a genre for this book other than realistic fiction, which is so broad, but it's focusing on a mother and a daughter, mostly the mother, Mina Lee, and what her story was like being an immigrant into America, and also being an illegal immigrant in America, and everything that goes along with that, and just her life story. And at the other end, you're looking at her daughter, who is just trying to understand a mom that she never knew after she died. And it sounds really sad, and it is really heartbreaking at times, but the way that Kim was able to craft the story with both these women, it was beautiful, and I really do highly recommend it. Now, the next book I want to talk about is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I've heard some amazing things about it. I heard it's a very graphic horror novel, and you might not want to eat anything you might not want to eat while you're reading the novel, basically. And I definitely agree with that. It is about a troop of Boy Scouts going on a camping trip with their scoutmaster, and then this parasitic tapeworm ends up being released onto these boys, and they also have to deal with a very sadistic, killing prone troopmate. Maybe not. But it was absolutely a phenomenal read. And again, I don't know what happened with The Loop because it's very similar concepts to an extent. Again, it's just very graphic horror, right? But I loved The Troop a lot more than I loved The Loop. Wow, that's confusing. I really, really suggest it. Only if you're into graphic horror, but beautiful book. And then I want to talk about Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. I recently just picked up her first novel, which is Homegoing, and I absolutely was in love with it. I've talked about it before. I would recommend it to anyone at all. And honestly, Transcendent Kingdom is very similar in that I loved it. I would recommend it to anyone. It's a beautiful novel, but it's also so different than her debut novel. Transcendent Kingdom is about really this young woman who is in her 6th PhD candidate year, studying mice, studying the pleasure receptive aspect of a mouse's brain. And she really just wants to figure out why people do things that are bad for them. She has a history of a drug-addicted brother who ended up dying from opioids. She has a mother who's chronically depressed. And she just wants to know why people do the things that they do, really. And it follows her in her PhD program, but it also follows her growing up with these aspects of her life. And it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and also Gyasi has such wonderful prose, and I found myself really highlighting a lot of the book because I just thought it was a beautiful sentence or a beautiful paragraph. I just really highly recommend it. And then, of course, I have These Violent Delights, which is a Romeo and Juliet retelling based in 1920s Shanghai. And I honestly found it incredible. It's a romance book, but it's also kind of a horror aspect almost, because there's this disease in Shanghai that keeps killing people and no one knows what it's about. And when I say killing people, I mean people are like ripping their own throats out, trying to scratch something. That got pretty graphic, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe not really graphic considering some of the books I've mentioned this month. But These Violent Delights has everything, and even with how big the book is, I thought it went really fast because you're trying to solve this mystery of the disease. You're trying to see if Julia and Roma get together, or even just what happened to them for them to break up. So I highly recommend it. It's kind of just a historical fiction Shakespeare retelling with a little romance twinkled in, honestly. And then you have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Now this book is a historical fantasy because you have this girl, Addie LaRue, born in France at the end of the 17th century. She makes a deal with the devil to live forever. Except there's a caveat. I mean, deal with the devil is never good. The caveat is that no one she meets will remember her. Ever. And so she lives her life being invisible in the lives of everyone around her. She can never make any connections. However, one day she meets a boy who does remember her. I thought it was a very interesting concept, and I have heard that the people who like books with a lot of ambiance, such as, I would say, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, like this book the most. And what can I say? The Night Circus is one of my top 10 books, so I like a little bit of ambiance, and that's this guy. V.E. Schwab, I'm sure many of you know, this is my first book, but she writes beautifully and almost poetically. And so as you're going through the life of Addie LaRue, you see a lot of things that happen. And I also found it very intriguing that there's a lot of art aspects to this book. For example, Addie LaRue goes through life not being able to talk or be remembered by anyone, but she finds out that she can implant ideas and implant inspiration for different artists. And so there's a ton of like pictures that are based off of this woman, and I found it beautiful. I think you should read it if you haven't already, but I'm sure many of you have. And I gave it a 4.5 stars. Yes. So the next book I want to talk about is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I went into this book not knowing it was the same author of one of my top 10 books, Daisy Jones and the Six, and I just found it absolutely phenomenal. And then I found out it's the same author. So The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, pretty popular here on BookTube, so I don't know if I need to go too much in depth, but it's about this, I think she was late 70s actress who is really mysterious. She has all these husbands, ex-husbands, dead husbands, you know, that thing. And she decides to grant one interview about her whole life's story to this unknown journalist, Monique Grant. And so you have this like mystery aspect of why is Monique Grant so important? But at the same time, you're going over this beautiful, beautiful story of Evelyn Hugo, and really at its base is what it means to be loved and in a relationship, in my opinion. It was just beautiful, and I gave it a 5 stars. It is highly recommended by me. That's all I can say. And then the last novel I want to talk about is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This book was such a surprise to me. I knew it was about a plague wiping out the world and a Shakespeare company going through each little settlement. However, I didn't know it was going to be as beautiful as I found it. Again, I've been on this increasingly long trend of reading apocalyptic disease books, and this book really hit home for me more than any other book I've read about these things. I don't really know how to describe it other than it's about a post-apocalyptic society trying to make a life for themselves. And it jumps through time in a very intriguing way. You get to learn a couple of characters in a very intriguing way. I guess the best way to describe why I like it so much is that it's just a realistic look at humanity after a disease wipes out most of the population. Point blank. But it was a 5-star read for me, and I'm debating if I'm putting it on my top 10 list or not. So we'll see. We'll see. Yes. And so that was my December wrap up. I read a lot of great books and some that really surprised me, which I'm really happy about. And I'm just really happy with this month. And I don't know what else to say about that. It was a great way to wrap up a year of reading, especially in 2020. So here's hoping to 2021 being a lot better and wonderful for everyone. We can cross our fingers and hope. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Happy New Year's! Why is that? There we go. Okay, the second author I read a lot this year is Junji Ito. This year too, actually.